We're going to get our Mayor, Gregor Robertson, and our Deputy City Manager, Sadhu Johnston, all mic'd up. And so we're working on that. And as we do that, I want to explain what this session's about. This is not where we ask our mayor to come and say a few words. This is, I think our mayor is going to be doing something you haven't seen too many public servants do, which is to look to each of you for advice. Both Mayor Robertson and Sadhu Johnston are here to really seek your advice as they transition to 100% renewable energy in this city. You will see on your table cards that look like this, or pieces of paper. I'd like you each to pass those out and have one in front of you through this period. We're asking you to fill this out. If you prefer to use digital media, we have a specific hashtag for this session. It's called #Van100RE. And the City of Vancouver staff are going to be looking at what comes in on that Twitter feed. Now, this is a complex issue. There is no easy. I just want to make sure you're all mic'd up. Not yet. It's coming. It's coming. Our miking is coming. We can speak into the mic as well. So let's just make sure we get these mics. There we are. I want to be able to ensure that you can flow and stand up if you need to. So what's going to happen is the mayor's going to come up, he's going to give a bit of context for Vancouver, and he's going to tell you as an elected official what kind of advice he is seeking. Then Sadhu Johnston, our Deputy City Mayor, and Sadhu is really the person that's the operational front end of all of the Greenest City Action Plan. He's going to ask you for the kind of advice that he needs. So this is, in a sense, modeling what we said we wanted to do, which was to really roll up our sleeves and get working on this. This is real, because the city staff have to come forward to council at the end of the summer with an action plan. So I want you each to think of yourselves as, that extremely well-paid consultant and give the best possible advice that you can. And this is not, your billing is, the breakfast, the lunch, yes, I know. The benefit, I know, thank you. So I want to take a moment and just introduce our mayor. It is a pleasure for me to do this. I've known Mayor Robertson for many, many years, and you can read his bio. I won't go through that. What I want to say is that I'm very proud to have Mayor Robertson as our mayor. I can't think of anyone who has taken such a personal commitment to greening this city, has made it a personal commitment to addressing homelessness, and I am very proud he is our mayor. I also want to take a moment to introduce you to Sadhu Johnston. Some of you had a chance to hear him. He had the toughest job last night. He had to come up last and get us all ready for the end of the night, and boy, did he do it well. As you can see, he is an inspirational person here. He is a great mind when it comes to operationalizing green actions. And he came, and we have to thank the United States. Your loss, Chicago, is our gain. So, Mayor Robertson, Sadhu Johnston, please join me on stage. We're going to begin with you, Mayor Robertson.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Shauna, and welcome everyone to Vancouver. Fantastic to see this room packed with an incredible brain trust on greening cities, on transforming this world to a green economy. And we are so excited for this session and being able to get a big upload from you to understand our next steps on our big goals. First, let me welcome you to our city and welcome you to the Coast Salish First Nations territory, the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, unceded traditional territory. We're always thankful and acknowledge that we are on their territory. And I want to really appreciate you for the work that you do in the world and the fact that you're here in Vancouver to help share what you've learned and what you think we all need to do next. We have a big goal, as Shauna said, to be the greenest city in the world by 2020. And that is a goal that's been endorsed 3 times in our civic elections. I've been elected 3 times with a majority of council that's focused on achieving this goal. We have a robust plan that we've put together with over 35,000 residents feeding in their ideas, their inspiration for how we do this. It's a decathlon as far as we're concerned. We have 10 arenas that we are working on our targets and goals for, and engaging our people and our businesses, neighborhoods, making sure that we do everything we can to hit those metrics, track them on an annual basis. And this is work that Sadhu Johnston has been leading at the city side of things, but we have an enormous array of community leaders, business leaders who've been very supportive of this and really have enabled the city to take this direction. Now, there are a lot of other cities that would like to be the greenest in the world as well, and that's a great thing. We're seeing this competitive approach inspire a lot of activity in a lot of different cities, and ultimately it is a necessity. We don't have a choice in this. We have to do it. It creates all kinds of economic opportunity. It's a moral obligation. It's something that is the big challenge of our time, and what a great time to be alive for us to be able to tackle this and achieve it in our lifetimes. So we are tracking well towards our 2020 goal and the targets that we've set. What we are looking at beyond that is the longer term goals, and what this conference is focused on, being 100% renewable, is really the big piece that we are moving now. We've approved that as council. We set the goal about 4 years ago to do that. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty. How do we actually do this? How do we go 100% renewable energy, all uses of energy in the city? There are a number of other cities, again, who've been ahead of the curve on this. Certainly with electricity, we're among a group of cities that benefit from a legacy of renewable energy being developed. In our case, hydroelectric power being developed here, which is about 94% of our electricity. We have, I think, a citizenry that is very environmentally conscious, and obviously that made a difference at the ballot box and endorsing setting goals like this. But it also means in day-to-day actions that we're seeing early adoption. We've seen decades of this happening in our city, visionary decisions that have basically positioned us to be where we are. But this next big step, it's fantastic to hear the incredible advice and intelligence that's being presented at this past panel, the gains that have been made on the ground, and the projections that clearly lay out how we're going to do this at a macro scale are fantastic. When we actually have to do that on the ground in a city, on a daily basis, we have to make this transition. We still need solutions. We still need to mobilize people. So we know very clearly our big challenges are with getting our buildings off of fossil fuels. First and foremost, natural gas provides most of the heat in our buildings, and our transportation network is the other big piece. So in terms of laying out some big questions for you and asking you to respond, getting not only utilizing our district energy strategy and those sources of energy. I will maybe just focus on that for a minute. Biomass is obviously plentiful here on the west coast of Canada. We have lots of trees, and we have big industry that uses those trees and ships those products all over the world. That's effectively what built this city, along with wild salmon. And we need to manage that resource very carefully, but right now we're seeing biomass, waste wood in particular, as being an obvious feedstock for renewable district energy. But the clean versus not clean is an important question. And over the longer term, mowing our forests, is that the right approach to this? That's an important question. And so for Vancouver's circumstance, for our climate, for the opportunities here, how do we get to wind, solar as quickly as we can? That's a piece that we haven't really dove into, but one that we'd appreciate feedback on in terms of the district energy strategy, and then in the suburbs and in the lower density neighborhoods, how do we have a network and a system that effectively provides the power, the heat, and cooling that we need in low density neighborhoods? That's another kind of gray area that we're working on, and there's some models out there, but we'd appreciate feedback on. Transportation, we've just heard this week that we have achieved our goal of going from 40% to 50% walk, bike, and transit in our city for getting around, which is a big push. So we're really proud of the people of Vancouver making better transportation choices. It's being supported by more investment in transit, although we're flatlined on resources and on resources going into transit, and that's what my button's all about. A referendum to support more investment in transit, 0.5% of sales tax to fund the next decade of investment in transit. That will help us continue to shift people out of cars, providing good transit service, frequent transit service right around the region, and improve the network, which it definitely needs. But we've seen a great shift with bicycles in these past couple of years with the safe, protected lanes. That infrastructure is being built out here in Vancouver, and people are making great choices, as they have in other cities where the infrastructure is being built. But how we achieve 100% renewable transportation is a big bugbear for us. Obviously, lots of us struggling with how we do that. Lots of brain power in this room that I'm sure has good ideas for that. Love to have your feedback on that transportation piece. And then maybe the third piece, housing and buildings for heat, transportation, 100% renewable. And the third piece I'd just like to seed in terms of feedback, questions to you, is how we continue to inspire and mobilize people in this city to make great choices with their lifestyle and to support the policy, the political initiatives that we are going to need to achieve this. We've had a whole engagement piece that's running parallel to this, and lots of connectivity between engagement and Greenest city goals. But ultimately, we're going to need to keep taking it to the next level to get to 100% renewable and make sure that that's embedded in the fabric of the city and the good decisions and political actions that people take every day, and certainly when elections roll around. Because connecting the dots between what we fight hard to do locally, we work very hard on this locally, but then we have provincial and federal governments that make, at times, very different and contrary decisions with energy policy, subsidizing fossil fuels. The emissions that are created by decisions made at provincial and federal levels make the gains that we make on the ground in our city look tiny. And so we need to think of the decisions that get made by our citizens politically, how we mobilize people to ensure we see this kind of support happen right across our province and our country, so that there's alignment between levels of government and a focus on this as our overarching goal in this country and around the world. So I'll leave it there. Really looking forward to your feedback, and I'm going to introduce you now to Sadhu, who makes it happen on the front lines every day in our city. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks, and good morning. How many of you were there last night? Okay, so maybe I'll pick up where I left off. So it's great to be here in the morning as well. It's a real treat. But I just want to start with the mayor's. He mentioned that we met our 50% non-vehicle transportation. What he didn't mention is we did it 5 years ahead of what our plan called for. It's really amazing. We were struck. Are we going to achieve this by 2020? Are we going to be able to do this? And residents have stepped up and said we want to use this infrastructure. We want to be out of our cars. So we've heard last night and today that technology and materials aren't the limit. We really have what we need to get there. And the mayor mentioned there's this friendly competition between cities, which is a lot of fun. What's amazing to me is how cities are working together globally to overcome this challenge and to figure out how to answer these questions together. This week has been really amazing, and Shauna, I want to personally thank you for your leadership. Not only this meeting that's happening the next couple days, but as an excuse, really, many cities came together over the last week. We had USDN, the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, which are part of something with C40 called the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. We had about 17 globally leading cities from Yokohama to Copenhagen and Sydney and Melbourne, and they're all in the room with us here. Those 17 cities are working together to say, how do we do this together? Let's create a common framework so that we can lead, and then we can share it with the rest of the world. We can create a roadmap with common definitions, common elements in it, so that others can pick it up and take it. And all of those cities and many others are committed to the types of targets that we're talking about today. So it's not just Vancouver. We're not alone. And many of the questions that the mayor just raised and that I'm going to raise for you are questions that we're hearing from all of our partner cities. We're really struggling with many of the same issues, and they're not generally technological issues. They're procedural, and they're about the pace of change. Last night I talked about the fact that this change isn't linear. We're really seeing exponential change, and that doesn't work in many cases with the regulatory systems that we've built. And so one of the questions that I want to hear in our discussion today is, how do we keep up? How do we keep the regulatory structures at the same pace that the technological changes that we need, and really the pace that the cities are pushing for here. So the first question is that on the regulatory side. And I want to give you one example. We know we need more electric vehicles. The mayor said here in Vancouver, we need mobility, we need to address that, and we need to deal with our buildings. So on the mobility side, we know there's biking and walking, and public transit, which is really working, but we need to electrify our fleets. So we want to do that. The BC Utilities Commission doesn't actually allow for the resale of electricity. So we want to build out an EV system, but we don't have the regulatory structure for anyone, including a city or private sector, to resell that electricity. So you actually, we're building EVs, and we're building chargers, but we don't have the regulatory structure to enable that process to take place, the resale of electricity. So that's one. We want to hear your ideas on what types of changes are being made elsewhere that are enabling that. The second example or question that I want to raise is just the city role in this transition. Think about the big pieces here. When you look at the power supply and many of the items we talked about earlier in the session, how does a city play a role in the energy supply when we don't control it? We don't run our natural gas company. We don't run our electricity company. So what incentives, what tools do we regulate? Do we mandate? Do we incentivize? So what role have you seen cities playing in Germany and elsewhere that have really helped us to make this transition? So the third question is capital investments. We're seeing a lot of change. We're seeing opportunities emerging, and companies that see this shift are trying to figure out, do they invest or not? And the mayor mentioned we've got a lot of wood in our area. We heard about wood producing energy elsewhere. That's clearly an opportunity here in Vancouver. We've got a lot of wood waste. Most of that is going to the landfill now. We need companies that want to take that out of the waste stream, and they need to invest in the sorting, the facilities to do that, to prepare it, to market it. And I think those companies are trying to figure out, okay, is there enough demand here? Is this real? Is there enough demand for us to make these investments? And so I'm curious, in other cities that perhaps are ahead of us in this regard, what types of messages have the city or the state, the provinces put out there to really help foster that kind of capital investment from the private sector that's needed to create the long-term supply of the pieces that are needed? And then the last question is just costs. We've seen costs plummeting in many cases when you go to renewable, but here in British Columbia, we have very, very cheap natural gas and very, very cheap electricity. And so that makes the business case harder for that transition to renewable. Maybe 10, 15 years down the road after we make that initial capital investment, you see the prices go down like we've seen in Germany. But a lot of the messaging in the early days is, oh, it's so expensive. And maybe there is a little bit more expense at the beginning, but it does come down. So I want to hear thoughts on how consumers have taken that. How have you handled some of those challenges? And ultimately, I want to riff off of what the mayor said, the pace of change. It's overwhelming for businesses. It's overwhelming for residents. We know we need to really push the pace of change, but what experiences have you seen elsewhere? What thoughts or suggestions might you have for how we can support the uptake and people's willingness to see the type of changes that we really need to in order to achieve 100% renewable energy city in the near term? So thank you very much, and we really look forward to hearing your feedback.
Okay. And we're going to open it up. We're going to have a bit of time around the room. Can I see those with the mics to please stand? Okay, great. I've got 2 people working the mics. Here are the 8 questions I heard. We want you to use those pieces of paper. We want you to use the Van 100 RE Twitter feed if that's your preference. Here are the 8 questions. The mayor asked for ideas on district energy, and he spoke specifically to the issue of the clean, the not clean, the waste wood, but also how do we get to wind and solar more quickly. He also asked the question about how do we heat and cool and power lower density neighborhoods. How do we inspire and mobilize people, especially since we also have to get to other jurisdictions. We've got the state or the provincial and the federal. Sadhu asked the questions of how do we keep up with the regulatory structures, and he used the example of the electric vehicle. What's the role of the city when they don't control the energy supply? What tools does the city have in its toolbox? What do we do to really promote that capital investment? How do we deal with costs, the messaging around costs? Yes, they're coming down, but how have other cities dealt with that messaging, particularly with consumers? And what works in terms of the uptake for the pace of change? So 8 questions. I'm not going to try and take them one by one. What I'm looking for is advice from you, quick, pithy advice for the mayor and for the City of Vancouver. Who would like to begin? There we go. Please introduce yourself, and I'm going to ask you to try to stay within 30 seconds to a minute.
Hi, my name is Mark Tija from Vancouver. I have a solar company here called Novo Solar Systems, and one of the things that Vancouver is well known for is that it's very difficult to install rooftop solar for residences, mainly because there's structural engineering required for the roof, and in some areas solar PV is not allowed. So one of my colleagues here had to give back a deposit to a customer because the city simply wouldn't allow them to do it. So that's a huge thing if you could relax some of those. It's the only municipality that requires that. We've done a lot of projects in the Lower Mainland that were quite simple and
So there's
easy
a
to deal with.
regulatory structure issue
Yeah.
there. Okay. Other advice? Here we go. To the man with 43 years of experience in this field.
To the person who just spoke, I'm Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Palo Alto, Gil Friend. For the man who just spoke, we had the same problem. We were taking 9 months to issue solar permits, and the business just left town despite our commitment to solar. We've streamlined that. It's now over the counter, so I'll be happy to talk to you about that later. My question for you is, what's the right scale for carbon taxes and offsets? Can these be raised locally and invested locally as a way to close the financial loop and accelerate the transition rather than as they are now invested somewhere else? Is that city scale, province scale, national scale? Where should that be done?
Do you want to take a
I give a very quick answer. The carbon tax that we have here in BC is a provincial tax. Municipalities are extremely limited by legislation what taxes we can collect. Property tax basically being the only one, then permits and business permits, fees, parking are basically where our revenue comes from. We don't have the ability to create a local carbon tax. Mayors around the region here actually asked the province for the ability to raise a carbon tax here in the region to fund public transit. And we were rejected in that, although what they put back was a referendum on increasing the provincial sales tax to fund that transit growth. But we have a carbon tax that's flatlined at $30 a ton in BC. It's had no impact. Actually, the studies demonstrate it's had a positive influence on the economy of the province, certainly the city, but it's been stuck at $30 a ton. And we don't have an ability as a city to raise more in the carbon tax framework.
But could you buy RECs and offsets, as Palo Alto is doing, as Copenhagen is moving to do, and invest those funds locally in driving down your emissions? That's a question to think about.
Do you want us to answer? I thought we were getting answers
You're
from
getting,
you.
you're asking
Yeah, I'm
questions,
kinda confused
but
about the
in
session
that
here.
question was some advice, I think.
I'll talk to you afterward, Gil.
Chris.
Forward to that.
Gregor, Sadhu, you mentioned biomass. One opportunity I believe you have for Vancouver, interfacing between the clean tech sector and for the city, is to decide to spend whatever it takes in the clean tech sector between Canada, BC, and Vancouver and the companies here to get to the holy grail of biomass gasification cogeneration. If we can get to the point that biomass is gasified and generates natural gas, like natural gas does heat and power, brain bust renewable energy completely. And I believe Vancouver, with companies like Dynamotive, with Nexter and others, have the base to do that. It's going to require $4 or $5 billion to get there. No reason why we can't do it.
4 or 5 billion, okay.
Okay,
That's 4 years of our budget.
okay. I have someone
can
over
work
there,
together on
Jose Echeverri.
Thanks, Jose Echeverry from York University in Canada. And basically, a suggestion about the issue of inspiration that you were asking for. And I'm glad that there is people from ECLAY, from the Global Campaign of Renewable Energy, from C40, and from all the cities that are represented this morning to hear this suggestion. And the suggestion goes beyond Vancouver, but I think you yourself, as the mayor of Vancouver, could be behind this. We met with my friend Manuel Valdez from the city of Barcelona, that is here. Maybe you can go like this so people know who you are. And we met with Dieter Salomon, which is the mayor of the city of Freiburg, Germany, which is one of the greenest cities in the world. In fact, he's competing with you for that title.
Exactly.
And he told me to tell you this idea because he happens to have to be in Korea right now as we speak. The Korean people asked him to come to speak there, so he couldn't be in Vancouver. And the idea is really simple. Inspiration requires knowledge mobilization. And knowledge mobilization requires seeing what other leaders are doing. And out of this forum, one of the things we could create, it's a mechanism that allows city staff to go to the cities that are leading to learn from them. And the idea is very simple. If you're in Santiago, Chile, or La Paz, Bolivia, pick a city that wants to go 100% renewable energy. And you are him, and there's no resources or network to be able to do these things. If there was a mechanism in place where you could come, say, to Vancouver or to Freiburg to learn, or to Barcelona, to learn how people are doing the plan, the targets, the actions, the timelines, etc., you would go and become really, really inspired. And you would come back with contacts to La Paz or to Santiago or to wherever, Woodstock, Ontario. And you would be now able to be a leader in your community. And you could do Peka Chuka presentations that would inspire your people to go this way. So what is the suggestion is that we have a new agreement that it would enable to do this. And how we would do it is, it's very simple. If people come to Vancouver from a city like La Paz, you take care of them. I'm serious about this. Hotel-wise, food-wise, that kind of thing, and contact-wise. And then when you go to La Paz or to Freiburg, they look after you. So then all of a sudden, for council, city council, instead of being perceived as some sort of power trip on the budget of the taxpayers, it's actually a knowledge mobilization trip to make contacts with the best people in the world. And then it becomes a justifiable expense. That's my suggestion to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go here and then here. Oh, we've got some, sorry. Can I have the mic right over at the end here, and then the next mic, Kian, would go here. Thanks so much. And again, I'm going to get you to go. I let Jose go a little bit longer, but if you could go a little bit shorter, that would be great.
Thank you very much. Stephen Shepherd from University of British Columbia. On the point about inspiring and mobilizing citizens, Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions is releasing at this conference a new special report on exactly that, social mobilization and how to mobilize communities at all levels. 7 major research projects results are being presented tomorrow at 10 o'clock in a session on interactive mobilization attempts. So there's a lot of answers out there from proven research results. So hope to get some feedback on that at this conference.
So promotion for a workshop that's going to answer this question on mobilization. A question here.
Thank you very much, David Chernushenko, a city councillor from Ottawa and chair of the city's environment committee. Now, I came here for suggestions from you, so what business do I have giving you suggestions? I suppose I was one of the 20 years plus people in the room. These are mostly quite generic, but you asked the question. I wanted to emphasize things that we know for the most part. Just as a reminder, I think, place the strongest emphasis on conservation. We're always immediately attracted to the new technologies, and we need to keep looking at them, but it starts by cutting by 50%. And as I say these things, this is sort of a note to self category for Ottawa as well. Use the strengths of natural systems. That's the tree canopy to shade, to cool, water flows, etc. within a city. We're always fighting them. We're fending them off, treating them as the enemy as opposed to using them as resources. Limit the inappropriate use of glass in new buildings. We continue to keep building glass buildings. And then we heat and cool to deal with all the glass that we put in, not to mention occasionally falling out of tall buildings. And finally, keep promoting your modal shift. This is more a pat on the back than a suggestion, but yes, keep going. Especially in Vancouver, you don't have the 6 feet of snow that we do in Ottawa, where you've got to figure out how to store it. So it's great to see that modal shift, particularly active transit, because as you know personally, Mr. Mayor, that there you hit multiple benefits, social, health, etc., as well as environmental. So there you go, a few ideas.
Thank you so much. Zachary, I'm going to go quickly.
So the issue of cost came up, and I'm going to talk about that with electric vehicles quickly. So when tablets and smartphones were not hot yet, analysts said they were too expensive. People weren't going to buy them. They got hugely popular because they're much better products. With electric vehicles, you can do the cost calculations. Plug and Drive has an excellent calculator to use. But what you need is for people to experience the electric vehicles. Electric charging, great, we need it, but they need to experience it. That's what's going to drive the revolution more than anything else. So 2 great ways to do that: electric car sharing programs. This gets people into electric cars. They experience them. And it's simple, but events where people come and they get to drive electric cars. Even as someone who wrote about them for years, it wasn't until I drove one that I thought, this is the future. So I think you just got to get people in the seats. Electric car sharing and events should do it.
There? Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Continuing on that electric car theme, thanks for the shout out, Zachary. Kara from Plug and Drive. And we have the same problem that you have in Ontario, where there is actually technically a law against reselling of electricity. And the way most folks get around it is they simply don't charge, by the megawatt or the kilowatt. They charge for the space, they charge a flat fee. But to clarify, we have asked the Ontario Energy Board to make a statement that they really didn't intend for EV level 1 or level 2 charging to actually be the reselling of electricity. They wouldn't charge you. They wouldn't get you to get a license if you put in a new air conditioning unit, and there's really not much difference other than that someone else is using the electricity. But in terms of the demand, it's so low that I think the Energy Board would write some kind of statement to indicate that they really don't intend that to catch as reseller.
Okay. I'm going to challenge you all to really, and thank you for that, great suggestions, but I'm going to actually really challenge you to get very specific in your advice. This is a council that has done a great deal of work on these issues, and we really want your expertise in this room. So really go deep.
Hi, Isabel Gordon. Until last year, I was the Director of Finance for the City of North Vancouver. So I've worked for 25 years in municipal finance in BC. And you mentioned that the property taxation system is the main one that we rely on for our funding in municipalities, and it's very inflexible. It does not allow you to incentivize any of the things that we're talking about. It does not allow you to shift taxation onto people who are not cooperating. And financial incentives are probably the fastest way to get where you want to go. So if you were allowed to give some sort of a property tax break to buildings that were using renewable energy, that would greatly increase the desire to do that. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to go to the province and talk to them about giving us more power to create differential tax rates, particularly in the residential sector. I mean, if you were allowed to give some sort of different tax rate to the higher density development, that would certainly help in terms of district energy and so forth. So that's my suggestion.
Okay, we have a gentleman here. I'm looking for the mic, and then Ken, I'm going to ask you to go to the back corner there. So where is the mic? Right here. If you could stand up so that the mic, right here, sir. Yes, the one right there. Thank you. And then if Ken, you could go to that back, and then we're going to take this gentleman here after that. So let's move the mics quickly. There we are.
Yeah, Ken Church, Natural Resources Canada. You mentioned about heating and cooling sort of suburbia, low density areas. We're doing a lot of work in what we're calling 4th generation district energy. And that's really started a little bit in the Drake Landing project, where you're not supplying them with water at, let's say, 80, 90 degrees. You're supplying them 55, 60 or lower. And there are some other Whistler system, ambient temperature. Reduces the losses, reduces the energy needs. We're working on whether it's cost effective or cheaper There's pros and cons to everything. But through the IEA, too, we're actually doing some research on a roadmap for fourth generation district energy. We'd be pleased to share that if you need it.
So some support from Natural Resources Canada. That's great.
We're
Over
here to
here,
help
right
you.
to the back corner.
Hi, my name is Carsten. I'm from the European Secretariat of ICLE in Germany, in Freiburg. For suggestions, first, I think when you go for 100% renewable energy for Vancouver, then enable citizens to invest into that pathway. So enable citizens to invest in solar roofs, on public buildings, and so on. Secondly, it was mentioned that often difficulties emerge. They are not related to technology, but they are procedural. They related to the procedures within municipalities. So my advice is that you do capacity building of political as well as technical municipal staff. They need to get prepared to get to the 100% renewable energy in Vancouver. Thirdly, I think it's important to connect the dots. You mentioned it already. I think it's important. You can be a resilient city. You build a resilient city, but you build maybe a city that is still not sustainable. So you need to look at the holistic view of sustainability and connect renewable energy supply also with sustainability. And last but not least, you mentioned your difficulties concerning the different levels of governance. I think it is, there are opportunities in different settings. And another setting is, for instance, when you talk to them, not here in Vancouver, but to talk to them in Paris at the climate COPs, where, for instance, ICLE is active. So you meet the provinces, the national governments of Canada potentially, and talk about your perspective at what you can offer as a city, what kind of reductions you can offer as a city to contribute to a global climate protection goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Vic Derman, Capital Regional District Director. If you want more solar rooftop PV, I think you need to create the financial institutions that make the initial installation painless, whether it's local government or banking institutions, or most preferably the utilities, that you 100% finance the capital cost of installation. And then the loan is paid back, either free interest or at a low rate, by the savings the individual would get from what they would normally pay. So it is financially to them, there is no hit at all. And after a period of time, the utility gets a management fee, the consumer reaps the benefit entirely once it's paid off. That kind of thing makes it attractive to put it on your roof. If you have an initial cost of several $1,000s, most people aren't going to do that. So that would be a big one. And just to mention for the lady who was the former financial officer, not only do we not get people a break on property tax when they create a green building, but BC assessment assesses it often higher. So we need to go to BC assessment and say, if somebody is doing the right thing, we want to lower their assessment, not penalize them for doing it. Thank you.
I'm going to take the final three. I'm going to ask you to be very quick, and I'm going to just let our mayor and Sadhu know that you're on after this. So tell us what you're taking away from that. So the final three, we're going to go one. Can I see those hands again? 1, 2. I'm looking for a woman. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Hi, Peter Whitelaw with Modus Planning, Design and Engagement in Town. 2 thoughts, really briefly. To the last comment, Halifax has got exactly that kind of program already in place. It's been very successful, so talk to them. Second thought on the neighborhoods. Schools are the anchor of every neighborhood in Vancouver. Have you looked at a partnership with the Vancouver School Board? I'm thinking of that on 3 counts. 1, opportunity to engage youth in exciting programs. 2, opportunity, 4 counts, opportunity for demonstration projects at the schools. 3, they're an anchor load potentially for a district energy system. And 4, you've got a fantastic green space. And from an urban design development perspective, great to see at least a small amount of additional density facing onto those green spaces. So is there an opportunity to have an anchor load, some extra supporting density, some demonstration projects, and some kids getting really excited and engaged and getting their parents excited and engaged? Thanks.
Thank you. One back there.
Yeah, at the provincial level, probably 40% of our GHG emissions are from transportation. The city may have roughly the same. Cities in the US, such as New York and Chicago, are looking at or have regulations that require low carbon content in fuels. And so on our way to a hydrogen powered or electricity driven mobility future, we could take 5 companies that currently provide 90% of the diesel and gasoline that most of us got here to this meeting partially on, and let them do the heavy lifting by writing a law that says thou shalt have low carbon content in your fuel. So that's a very tangible action that we can take in the very near future.
Okay. And I understand that they have taken your idea. No, you
but
were
I'm
going
gonna still mention what I had to say. I'm Caroline, and I'm the founder of Young Speakers. It's a communication and public speaking program for social change for youth grade 10 to 12. And the idea is about youth engagement. I think we need a very structured strategy on how to engage youth in the community, because the cities of the future are their cities, and it's very key for them to be part of this conversation, not only to build awareness and educate them, but it's also to get them used to the idea of voicing their opinion, voicing their thought, and nurture their civic engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I didn't get to all of your ideas. So I know, though, that we have pieces of paper on those tables. We are actually very real in this. The City of Vancouver has asked us to help them with this action plan. So we need your best advice. Please use those forms, leave them on the table, and we are then going to have a chance to pick them up. I'm now going to turn the mic over to Mayor Robertson and Sadhu Johnston for your thoughts on what you're taking from this session as you go forward.
Thanks, Shauna. Well, thank you. First and foremost, a big thanks for sharing ideas in a kind of popcorn style. Don't know if everyone had a lot of time to prepare, but it's obvious there's a wealth of knowledge and experience here that even the leading cities, we think we have lots of things figured out, but we're all learning day to day, and this kind of exchange is really, really valuable. The follow-up stuff to this, I love that idea about sponsoring and hosting people from other cities, because it is an issue. Travel on the taxpayer dollar is an issue, but if it's in the context of we're hosting people from other places, that's a responsibility. And so I like the framing of that, and also the opportunity to get more people together. We have a proliferation of conferences around city building as we're urbanizing, and the growth of cities is so enormous. The business opportunities are obviously creating lots of opportunities for people to gather and figure out what's next and do business. Being able to elevate it to this level and to integrate the different gatherings that have happened with the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, the C40 crew that's been here. This week's been very rich for bringing people together from around the world that are the leading lights on this front. And I hope we continue to have lots of these opportunities and lots of small breakout opportunities. So lots of great ideas. I know we were scribbling furiously away here along with our city staff who do enormous amount of work to support these goals. And there may be lots of follow-ups here to make sure that we can achieve our goals and keep people connected who have the ideas that can advance them. So big thanks to Shauna and Simon Fraser University for hosting us too. I don't think I said that at the outset, but it takes catalysts in the community, and we have a room full of them here, but we're going to need a lot more catalysis. It's not a very sexy way of putting it, but thanks for all your work to inspire and mobilize all this important change, and we look forward to working with all of you together in partnership going forward. Thanks. Sadhu?
Well, a number of years ago during the engagement for the Greenest City Action Plan, we recognized an opportunity to engage our university students more. We have over 100,000 students in and around Vancouver, and recognize they come in, they do their work, and many of them leave, and there's key opportunities. So we had a session similar to this. The idea came up for creating City Studio, which is now established. We've gotten over 80,000 hours of student time solving city problems. And so City Studio is a program, it's a partnership between 6 universities. And that's now engaging them and actually working with city staff in city offices, helping to solve city problems. And the idea came, Caroline and second to last speaker mentioned youth. I think, I think the students in Vancouver it's a missed opportunity to really engage our young people. They've got so much passion and energy and interest, and they live in our communities. And so I think that's one real takeaway for me. We don't run the school board, so to speak, from the city perspective, so it's really about the partnership that was mentioned, but we've been doing little bits and pieces with rain gardens in schools and energy conservation programs and farms in schools. But I think that's one where we really haven't cracked that nut yet. And I think finding a way to really engage our school students, the younger students who see many of these issues with fresh eyes, and finding a way to empower them to have an impact in their community, not to educate them, but to help them educate us and to help solve those problems. So that's one that it's crystallizes for me the importance of that. I think someone mentioned the ongoing focus on energy conservation. And that ties in with all the glass in our city. We've changed our building codes. We have the greenest, some of the most aggressive building codes in North America, which you're going to see are starting to have an impact on all that glass. But we're not going to achieve these targets without looking at the existing buildings, because those buildings have systems that are going to be operating by the time that we need to achieve this target. And so we need to figure out how do we get shifts in those buildings, and energy conservation is critical in new construction in existing buildings. And then I think something that just resonates for me is using the strengths of natural systems that someone mentioned. We often want to engineer a lot of different things, but passive house, which we talked a lot about with many of our cities in Europe and elsewhere, is just simple strategies that can cut the energy conservation in a new building and use natural ventilation, use natural shading, use insulation and air sealing to cut down the energy consumption of new homes, new buildings by 70, 80%. And they're simple off-the-shelf technologies. They're not a lot of crazy stuff that we need to do. And so we really need to use those systems to bring down the energy that our buildings are requiring, so that we can then offset it with renewables. So I think that's another really important piece of this. So and I think there's a lot of really good ideas here, and I want to reiterate the thanks from the city for all of you for your good ideas. And many cities have come here and have been sharing. And I just want to really thank each and every one of them. I see many of them in the audience, and it's an amazing sharing. Where in some ways we're competing with all those various rating systems that rate us against each other, but ultimately every one of the cities are committed to helping each other to solve this problem, and that's really encouraging. It gives you a lot of hope to know that we're all working on this together. And so in that vein, we are committed to council that we're going to report back on our plan for how we do this. We'll integrate some of your ideas from today, and I want to call somebody out. Malcolm Shield is in the audience. Malcolm, raise your hand, say hello. So Malcolm's charged with writing this plan. So if he looks very stressed out, he should be very stressed out. And so if you have a chance, talk to him. There are other city staff around. We'd love to continue to get your feedback over the next couple days. Yeah, thank you for fanning him. Again, that's Sydney helping Vancouver right there. He's helping to cool Malcolm down. So no, but seriously, engage with city staff. There's a lot of them here. We're going to be on panels and sharing. We'd love to continue to get your advice over the days ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So, is there not reason to be inspired by this city? I want to thank both of you, not just for what you bring today and for being so open and listening. You did something I don't think any mayor's ever done, which is come up and just say, I'm going to hear you and hear what you have to say. So I want to thank you for that, for being open to listening, but also for your leadership. This has been fabulous, and we are with this movement, and I hope that Vancouver is really continues on the forefront of this movement. So thank you both.